Hey guys, what's up to Periscope? I see Mixer, I see Facebook, I see dlive.tv/The Hake Report, nice. And YouTube is live, and Twitch should be connecting soon. This is The Hake Report. It is Sunday, June 7th, 2020. Happy birthday, Freddie. I know a guy whose birthday it is. Nice. Actually, I may know a couple people whose birthday it is. Happy birthday. It's 5 minutes till the 9 a.m. hour here in Los Angeles. I am James Hake, and I'm going to be interviewing a very interesting person. But first, since we're here and it's early, and we are going to be connecting with him, should be connecting with him, but I want to play for you, and we are on Twitch. What's up? Hey, spoiler alert. Thank you to Jib Jab for the super chat already. I'm going to be connecting with Jeff Charles soon, so hang tight, guys. But first, let me show you some interesting footage from a funeral that took place yesterday with a very famous figure who is more famous in his death than in his life, and that would be George Floyd, who died in Minneapolis. There was a funeral for him with the relatives of his relatives in North Carolina. Check this out. I think this is his stepmother or wife or mother. I think stepmother, but it's hard to tell. Here it is.
I stand in for the Floyd family. I'm George Perry Floyd's senior wife, and I thank God for my Floyd family. Everybody been talking about everything and else, but this family is a kind, loving, they love everybody. Amen? And I'm not the one to preach, but I come to tell you today that God is on our side. I don't know about you out there, but God is on our side, Bridget. Can I get a witness here? And I'm going to tell you something. We're bringing back love back in the universe. With my baby, good God Almighty, y'all better come over here. I don't know about you. Y'all better clap them hands. Because God, you know what God did? He told us to go back to our first love, which is Jesus. And I guarantee you that George Floyd Jr., he brought love back in the universe. And while we're doing that, he said, go back and begin to pray and fast. Matthew 17:21. Some things only come by faith and prayer. Can I get a...
Oh, it cut off? Did we? Oh, darn. But it was, you got the gist of it. You got the gist of it. It cut off, huh?
You want to finish it?
Yeah, let's finish it if you can. Beautiful.
Can I get a witness? Through troubles and trial, see more than you can bear. God said he would make thee
Beautiful. That's the stepmother or mother. I think it's stepmother. Wasn't that sweet? I had to show that to you. I was laughing when I saw that. And here's, we have like a minute or so, and I don't know if have we connected yet? We have a minute or so, and we're still connecting with this Jeff Charles guy. So let me show you a little bit more, and I will be taking your calls to 888-775-3773. Here's more of them carrying on shortly after that. You see her. Well, if you're listening to the podcast, you just have to hear me. I'm going to tell you what's going on. She's dancing along with the other black Christian ladies all dressed in white at this funeral. Watch this. And there's another one. They continue to carry on. I don't know if that's normal for a black funeral. That's North Carolina. I did not attend. This is... Hang tight, callers. It's almost over, don't worry. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you, blacks. That's how Joel grew up. Joel Friday here. No, I don't think so. He grew up in a white church. It was all races in Covina, right? Covina? Yeah, big church. Beautiful. Are we connected? No. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So Nick is going to be taking your calls. He's screening. I don't know where Jeff Charles is, if he's trying to connect or what's going on. But Jeff Charles is a black conservative guy who's supposed to come on the show to talk with me about. I got in a fight with him over. I said blacks don't care about black on black crime because he wrote an article saying that, and he was talking about how people are trying to demonize people like Ahmaud Arbery and others, maybe George Floyd. George Floyd case hadn't happened yet. This was May 21st, I think. And we're going to talk about so-called racism and the destruction in the black community. We got in a fight a little bit about Jesse Lee Peterson. So I'm just going to get a brief thing about Jesse Lee Peterson and what he thinks. And it's going to be fun. If we have time, we will take calls, including with the guest. Make sure, by the way, and I will be I have my second favorite caller on the line. Make sure to catch Church with Jesse Lee Peterson. Church with Jesse Lee Peterson. rebuildingtheman.com/church. Every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 Eastern, which is 1 Central time. My show is 1 hour here, on Sundays anyways. Make sure you subscribe to Bond Rebuilding the Man YouTube channel and like the Bond Rebuilding the Man Facebook page. That's Jesse Lee Peterson's church/nonprofit. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy, just in case he said he prefers Zoom, so should be good to do it, as opposed to doing Skype. I also gave him a phone number that he can call if he's having trouble with Zoom. But anyways, he's a writer for redstate.com, which I kind of consider a rhino outlet. Wasn't that guy, that fatter white guy, wasn't he the founder of Red State? He was a never Trumper, but he changed his mind. I think he's now pro-Trump. So maybe I'm mean and unfair in calling it a rhino outlet. He also writes for libertynation.com. Conservative. He black. Recent articles includes AOC fights racism with racism? Oh, he'll be right there. He'll be right here. Don't sweat it, guys. He will be right here. So show a picture of him just so you can see in the little intro thing. So he does believe in racism. And he also wrote an article, Why the Progressive Left Loves Riots in Black Communities. And I think that he means that he wants that, no, not he wants, but the progressives, the liberals, which he doesn't support them, at least not the far left, the Marxists, they love blacks to stay poor, was his point with that article. And he also has an article called Watch White #Black Lives Matter protesters attack a black police officer. You may have seen that. I don't know if you kept up with it. Attorney General Barr threatens action against Marxist groups co-opting the George Floyd protests, is another piece by him. And yeah, they are. But it's, the George Floyd protests, in my opinion, are Marxist themselves. That means to say communist, anti-America, anti-white, anti-justice, all that stuff. And he also says how racist Antifa thugs are skewing the media narrative against Minneapolis protesters, which is true. That's true. But the Minneapolis protesters don't really have a leg to stand on either. And a couple weeks ago, his article, which I debated with him a little bit about, Conservative Inc., continues to pretend that black Americans don't care about, quote-unquote, black-on-black crime. And there's some background on him, pretty interesting. I'll allow him to tell it to you if and when he connects. But in the meantime, since you guys are here on the lines, and once I get to him, it'll be a little while before I'm able to get to calls because I want to get through a lot with him. There's a lot I want him to react to and want to hear what he actually thinks. But anyways, let me get to my second favorite caller in the meantime. Earl from Michigan. Earl, how are you doing?
Hola, buenos dias,
Hola.
Senor Hake.
Buenos dias, Senor Earl from Michigan.
First and foremost, your talk with Joe of Arizona.
Yeah.
Joe was right
No, he wasn't.
about a lot of things she was saying.
No, he wasn't, Earl.
Say what?
He was not right. And in fact, he contradicted himself, I noticed. He used to be saying that less than 2% of blacks commit violent crimes. And then on Friday, he said point something percent of blacks commit violent crimes. So I'm like, well, I guess that would still be less than 2%.
Yes, there would. So,
But hey, Earl,
Earl.
but that he's not right about that. He is a Jesse hater. He's an intellectual, and he doesn't. He has this fake care, which is a mother type care for black people, which is nice. You know, he wants to raise the kids right, which is right, but he's missing something, and he thinks that Jesse is a false Christian, and he's a Jesse hater. You can hear it in his voice. He's a bitter Jesse hater, and he's unhealthy. And Jesse's a healthy, happy, full of love. Everything that he says is love. And so you guys are wrong, and Jesse's right. And on top of that, he's a sucker. Are you still there, Earl?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I appreciate
I'm
that.
just,
On top of that, hold on, real quick.
I'm waiting till you finish.
Appreciate that. On top of that, he's a sucker because I lost my point. He's a sucker. That's enough. Go ahead, Earl.
Yeah, for the most part, you have nothing to fall back on. The other thing is that he's correct about, like I said, what he said. And
What did he say that he's correct about?
What I was disturbed about what you said was that you went to his affliction to justify him holding Jesse to the fire, which had nothing to do with his affliction. Dr. Hake.
Dr. Hake.
So I was thoroughly disturbed that you would correlate and stroke with
anger?
holding Jesse to the fire.
So you missed the point of it.
To the fire.
You missed the point of
Huh?
it. You missed the point of it. I brought up his affliction because that is relevant to his anger. He said...
Not necessarily.
Yes, it is, necessarily.
That's your assumption.
No, it's not. He admitted he admitted he has stress.
Yeah, you can have stress.
That's anger.
A lot of people have stress.
Yeah, I know.
But Dr. Hake, to then diagnose just because he has stroke is a single cause of why he had a stroke is a leap. You don't know his
he
medical
told us.
history?
He told us why.
Examined him?
No, he told us why. He said, I'm stressed out. I've been trying to be all things to all people, running a business, family, all this stuff. And that doesn't come from a healthy outlook. It doesn't come healthy outlook. That's a liberal word, right? That comes from anger.
Well,
And he doesn't realize that comes from anger.
No, that comes from stress. Stress is not anger.
Yeah, when you react that badly to stress that you have a stroke, that comes from anger, man.
No, that comes from pressure. Stroke is
No, you can
not handling pressure well.
not handling pressure well. That's anger.
No, that's what you call anger.
Yeah.
Anger being mad at something.
Huh?
That's not
Yes.
anger. You misinterpret a lot of things because you want to back up whatever Jesse said.
He's mad at his stress.
And
hey, Earl.
so you're wrong on a lot of different counts.
Well, anybody can you can be an intellectual and, rationalize anything that you want to believe, but just look at these people. And by the way, Jeff will be connecting soon, guys. He's just having trouble with his computer. Just look at how loving and perfect Jesse Lee Peterson acts. And honest, oh yeah, he's a sucker because he won't go to Jesse with this stuff. He's like, I tried. But he comes to me like, please, like I'm supposed to defend the things that Jesse says when I don't know what Jesse knows. I don't have his mind. So I can only defend the way that I see it. But he's being a sucker.
You're the biggest Jesse defender I've ever known.
Thank you. Wow. Nice.
You're the biggest lackey for Jesse. You hang on his every word. He's your cult leader.
No. Well, hey,
said
Earl.
Must be true.
Hey, Earl.
Here you are calling him perfect. How do you know he's perfect?
Well, I mean, he said he's perfect.
He's your God or something?
No, I mean, we're supposed to be perfect. You know that's in the Bible,
We're
right?
supposed to be. Yes, sir. That's the stupidest reason you got.
I thought
all the errors and mistakes Jesse's made, and you still blindly call him perfect. How stupid can you be?
Calm down, man. The Bible says, be perfect. Jesus said it. So it's a fact. Earl.
Yes, be perfect.
Yeah. Now.
Sometimes it takes a while to get perfect. You know, instantaneously change to perfect.
Yeah.
Knucklehead.
Okay, so.
Learn something.
What did you call me? What did you call me? Something head?
Knucklehead.
Knucklehead. Nice. Well, man.
But
you and Joe can suffer and die.
Yeah, you can follow Jesse straight to hell because you believe every word he says. Unquestioned.
Hey Earl. So Earl? That's a good point. So do you agree with Jesse then when Jesse says, "Don't follow me. I'm not your leader. Don't believe what I say. Know for yourself." You agree with Jesse when he says those things?
No, I don't, because then he contradicts himself and says, "I'm telling you, don't do that. Do this. Don't do that." But
you're never happy.
Yeah, you told me, don't believe what I'm saying, but don't do what I don't. If you don't do what I say, suffer and die because you're supposed to do what I say, but don't do what I say. How stupid and contradictory can you be?
You're a sucker. You're never happy. Remind me of my wife if I had one.
I'm just exposing you for the hypocrite you and Jesse are.
No, I mean, you're the hypocrite. You're not happy if I follow Jesse, which I shouldn't do, right? And you're not happy if Jesse tells people not to follow him.
What you do doesn't make me happy or sad.
Huh?
I just pointed out.
No, but you're... Whatever. All right, Earl, nice talking with you. Adios.
Adios, amigos.
All right, take care. I'm going to get to Art and the rest of the callers, but I have with me a special guest. Appreciate you guys joining, and appreciate you joining. This is none other than Jeff Charles. And I told you guys, I think, he's on Twitter at Jeff on the Right, a writer for Red State and for LibertyNation.com for both of those. Conservative, and he's black. And a quick background. I happened across his tweets May 21st saying people are trying to smear Ahmaud Arbery and other supposed black victims in order to justify statist violence, which is police or, the government. So he shared this article, Conservative Inc. pretends that blacks don't care about black-on-black crime. I told him they don't, and neither do you. I told him that, right? And he said, that's rich coming from someone who works for Jesse Lee Peterson. And I'm like, a Jesse hater. I rest my case. And he goes, no, unlike Jesse, I actually like black people. And I said, no, you don't. You're fake. And he said, you work for a dude who says white people build, blacks destroy. Why are you even pretending to care? And I said, your type of care, quote unquote, is enabling more destruction. Jesse's right. And it went on and on. It was a great discussion. So I have Joel Friday here moderating, making sure I don't cut him off too much or get hung up too long on any one subject because I have a lot to get through. It's 17 after, and we have only until 10 my time, which would be 1 Central Time, 2 Eastern. No, I don't know. Anyways, noon Central. So anyways, quickly, Jeff Charles, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing well as well. Thank you for joining. I appreciate this.
Good. I appreciate it too. I think we'll have a good conversation.
Quick question on the riots and the protests that are going on. I know you're going to be not supporting necessarily, but attending a Black Lives Matter rally over there, I think in Austin or wherever you are in Texas.
Yes.
And do you see these protests around the country and in some cases rioting and looting as an escalated attempt to like overthrow decency and justice in America? That even this, for me, in my mind, even these so-called peaceful protesters are like useful idiots for this evil revolution, which some might call communist. What do you say? Do you agree with that?
So what I'm about to say applies only to the peaceful protesters, not to the rioters or the looters, because they don't care about George Floyd, they don't care about statism, they don't care about anything. For the peaceful protesters, I think it's the exact opposite of what you're saying. They're rising up to overthrow statism. George Floyd was the victim of a statist murder. Now, this doesn't mean that I would agree with everything that they believe politically. And I definitely have some issues with the overall national Black Lives Matter organization because that has nothing to do with Black lives. It's been co-opted by white progressives. But what a lot of people on the right don't understand is that the local groups of Black Lives Matter and even other groups are not necessarily affiliated with that. They're not necessarily pushing that agenda. But it's not just Black Lives Matter who are peacefully protesting. These are just regular everyday people who just want to see an end to this level of police brutality, which, by the way, doesn't only include situations where somebody ends up dead. It can also include excessive force. It can include a lot of different things that bad police officers do to American citizens.
I don't like the term police brutality. I think it is better described as excessive force because brutality doesn't really describe a lot of these things. And we outside viewers are more like, say, faint of heart than the people who are actually doing the job and in the midst of the heat of the moment, the situation. And my view of the Black Lives Matter from the start, it was founded by these radical leftist black lesbians, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and that woman, she came on the Jesse Lee Peterson show and hung up on him. I'm blanking on her name. But anyways, isn't it interesting that they call these protests much better, mostly peaceful and legitimate, when they didn't call the Tea Party that. They didn't call these anti-lockdown protests that. They're kissing up to them because they're leftists. I'm saying I'm referring to the media and the politically correct people.
I know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're talking about the media being corrupt, you're not going to get any disagreement from me on that.
All right.
I mean, I always say the corporate press is the enemy of the people. So, I mean, the way they cover these things is designed to push a particular agenda and not one that has anything to do with benefiting Black people or anybody else. I
say the same about the corporations in general. I see all these like Uber Eats and Yelp and all these different, things, Instagram, Twitter, doing this hashtag Black Lives Matter, support Black-owned businesses. It seems so just phony and put on and just fake. And were you as disgusted as I was at Drew Brees, the football player, licking boots to the Colin Kaepernick's false narrative? And Trump was right to push love for the country. Do you agree?
With Drew Brees, I mean, I don't respect the fact that he just gave in. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
agree with him, and I also don't 100% agree with Colin Kaepernick either.
Right.
With his protest, I didn't disagree with what he was protesting. I just didn't think that that was a very good and effective way to do it. But he made his decision, and I'm not even sure about his motives either. But I think for me, what I look at is the overall point. Does this need to stop? I mean, we can call it excessive force or police brutality, because I think you're right in one sense, because police can overstep their bounds without necessarily being brutal. Either way, it's statism, and either way, it has to stop. So that's mainly what I focus on. I mean, a lot of that other stuff is just pageantry and theater to me.
Yeah, he's saying that police are getting away with murder and going on paid leave, and meanwhile, like
some have.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know of a situation where that's happened. But what about black brutality? There's like, this is the elephant in the room, you know? And what about blacks, this epidemic of blacks resisting arrest and running from the cops? That's never, I don't ever hear that really addressed in the mainstream, that this is a problem, we got to stop it. Sometimes I hear like, there's some black groups that want to train kids how to act around the cops. But the underlying theme of it, and that's fine, but the underlying theme of it is this pretense that cops are racist. You know, this is so disgusting. Have you, where is the focus on what the blacks are doing wrong? It's so one-sided. It's like the worse blacks get, the more perfect the cops have to be. And of course, the cops are maybe getting worse too, because society is declining.
Yes, I mean, and the thing is, and I think one of the damaging narratives here is that black people do not care about these issues, and black people don't try to address them in our own community. The fact is, we do. If you ask any average black man or woman what they tell their kids or what they talk to with other black people, what do they tell you? They'll say, if you get pulled over, your hands on the wheel. You call us the officer sir or whatever. You show respect. You do not resist arrest, because that can end up with you dead. And realistically, the majority of black people do not resist arrest. The majority of black people do not disrespect police officers. So the ones who do, I mean, in those situations, I mean, I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, you probably shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, I'm not going to excuse an officer who was overstepping his boundaries, because they need to be held accountable too. These are government officials who have been given the authority to take away our rights when they deem it necessary. So as a conservative, as somebody who doesn't trust the government, who is skeptical, who wants limited government, I'm not just going to give them a free pass just because they have a badge on. They need to be held to a level of accountability as well. But going back to what you were saying, in the black community, we do talk about these things and we do hold each other accountable. You just never hear about it. Take one wild guess as to why that is.
Well, I mean, you could blame the media, but I don't really see it on a mass. I don't see the black leaders at the top dealing with these issues. The ones who are in the
black leaders.
The so-called black leaders. The pastors, so-called, and the activists who go on TV and talk. And the people on Black Twitter that I see. I don't see the regular ones fighting against this stuff, against pointing a light on the blacks and how they're acting. And it is, you're right, it might not be most of them, but it is way out of proportion. Like, I saw a statistic from a few years ago out of San Francisco. Blacks were, according to, maybe the police released this, 8 to 9 times more likely to resist arrests than other races over there. And so it is way out of proportion.
Well, and you got to also keep in mind that we encounter the police a lot more often than white Americans and other Americans as well.
But that's because of the black crime, right?
Some of it is because of the black crime. Some of it is just because of over policing. There's also other factors that come into play, like arrest quotas. We have that in a lot of police agencies where they're basically driven by fear to make more arrests or to make more busts. And where are they going to go to do that? They're not going to go to Beverly Hills, right? No, they're going to go to Watts. They're going to go to bad areas where they know that they can most likely find something that they can use to make an arrest. So it doesn't surprise me that black people might be more likely to resist arrest if they're encountering police more often. I mean, you look at how stop and frisk was used under Mike Bloomberg in New York City. He drastically increased the amount of interactions between, not positive reactions or interactions, but negative interactions between minority Americans and the police. So it does make sense that that number would be up. But that being said, you're never gonna hear me say that, well, you should never resist arrest. I mean, maybe there are going to be some situations where that's appropriate, but in most cases, if you want to stay alive, try to do something about it later. But here's the thing: a lot of these instances of police brutality don't even get reported. I mean, the guy that killed George Floyd had 18 complaints, but how many weren't submitted to the police department? Why would they submit it to the police department, submit a complaint when it's the same department that employs that officer? They're going to get protected, and the police do get protected. And just real quick, to go back to what you were saying before about police officers usually getting away with this stuff, only like 36% of police officers actually get prosecuted. And of that number, only about 33 get convicted. And an even smaller percentage actually see jail time if they are convicted. That's not the same for civilians, right? So there is a problem here with a lack of accountability on the part of our police as well.
But that sounds like it's presuming that accusations are evidence. Accusations fly all the time. Blacks and others falsely accuse, especially cops and others, regularly. I mean, the Me Too movement was a crazy example of women accusing men and gays accusing men. But you mentioned over-policing. But what does that mean? Because we need high crime areas need this broken windows policing, and stop and frisk, that doesn't have to be a negative encounter. If you are on board with wanting crime to lower in the community, you should be fine with being stopped and frisked. That's not a lack of dignity. If you're innocent, who cares?
That is the exact same type of thinking that leads to tyranny, that leads to statism. So, I mean, and I've been stopped and frisked before. Well, one second, I've been stopped and frisked before too, when I lived in Rancho Cucamonga, not very far from where you are.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen to me as much as it happened to people in New York. So it was an annoyance to me. But imagine if you get stopped and frisked and you can't even leave your house with getting stopped and frisked. That's what was happening to people in New York under Bloomberg. So I understand that if an officer sees somebody who is actually acting suspicious, I have no problem with an officer going over and asking some questions. But if they're basically just making stuff up just to accost people, hoping that they'll find some marijuana or something else, that's a problem. That is not what the Constitution was supposed to be protecting.
Listen, that's fine. I generally agree with the principle of it, but the worse the people get, the more excuses you give the state to step forward, because you're going to increase the support for that kind of stuff, because the crime is so out of control. So it's kind of like the freedom was made for moral people, and the more immoral the people get, the less freedom they're going to have. I mean, that's just reality. You can be for decreasing the state all you want, but you have to have people be good, and the people are not good. In New York, it's still out of control. I mean, I don't know about how Bloomberg was. I know that that Bloomberg's kind of a liberal. Anyways.
Yeah.
Black on black crime. We're at the bottom of the hour. We have like 30 minutes to go. Tell your story with this. You mentioned that I think you said you grew up with a single mother, and you had a brother who was a victim of black on black crime. Is that right?
Cousin, not a brother. I don't have siblings, but I have a cousin who was a victim of that in Pomona, California. I won't go too much into detail about that because it's family stuff. But I mean, when it comes to black on black crime, I think one of the prevailing myths on the right is that black people don't care about black on black crime, and it is a myth. Now, if you're talking about the media not caring about it, you're 100% right. But when it comes to the black community, we have hundreds of thousands of organizations all across the country that are specifically designed to decrease black on black crime. And here, I don't really even like using the label black on black crime, because most crime is within the same race, right?
Right, but it's
I know you're going to go with a 50% statistic.
I wasn't going to use that one, but it is way out of proportion to other white on white crime.
And that's why I consider it. and that's why I consider it to be a problem. It's far too high. But I'm not the only one that cares about this. In the Black community, like I said, you have tons of organizations who have been able to get results. I mean, in several major cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, which you guys always love to bring up, crime has decreased. In 2019, homicides had decreased for the third year in a row. So this isn't necessarily the easiest problem to fix. Now, some of it had to do with policing and better policing that helped to decrease that. But also these organizations are dedicated to intercepting kids before they get into gang life. They're also dedicated to providing better economic resources, jobs, things like that, so that they're not even tempted to get into that life. Like a guy I know, Shakema Meneket, he's in North Charleston in South Carolina. He runs a community resource center that has a computer lab. It's all outfitted. He's got food pantry. It's amazing. And the things that they've been able to do in the community, these are the types of things that decrease violent crime. It's not just a matter of just sending a bunch of police in there, because realistically, that's not going to really solve the problem. It's only a component of a much larger picture.
But that's why I support Jesse Lee Peterson so much, because he gets at the root. Because what's wrong with the blacks, that the crime is that out of proportion. It's not just about jobs and keeping the kids out of trouble with programs and stuff. They need families, and they need morality and responsibility. And you say that the blacks care about black on black crime, and I'm sure a lot of them care, but so many of these people who care, I'm using air quotes, they'll turn around and stab Jesse in the back, metaphorically speaking, right? They hate Jesse, and Jesse's like addressing the real solution of morality, turning back to men as opposed to putting women in charge and all that stuff. What's wrong with the blacks? And the other thing you mentioned, that they care, and that they, sometimes they do these demonstrations, which I don't think demonstrations really do anything except for political pressure. But what gets them riled, like a lynch mob, is when a perceived white person kills a black person, perceived to be unjustly. That's what gets them riled. That's what gets them out on the street like mad. It's not just the media, because it's not the media putting these people out on. I mean, it is kind of the media riling them, but they get riled and out on the streets around the country over this George Floyd thing, which in my mind is a questionable situation. I don't know what the truth is about George Floyd, but let's not get into that argument. But elaborate for me just a minute on what you think of Jesse Lee Peterson, and I'll say what I think of him.
Yeah, so with Jesse Lee Peterson, it's not that I disagree. There are some areas where I do agree with him. There are areas where I don't. And when I said that statement that I actually like black people, I'm sorry, like when you say the things that he says, it's hard for me to buy that you actually like black people. You can't say things like black people destroy while white people build. Black people have built a lot in this country. Every race and culture has flaws. White people have caused a lot of destruction. Every race and culture has. So for him to just single out black people with that, how do you think you're going, like, for instance, like let me just back up. I want more black people to join the conservative movement. I think you would agree with me on that. If you want that to happen, how do you do that? By demeaning black people. It doesn't work that way. It's one thing to point out issues in the culture, but also to acknowledge the societal impact of the situation that a lot of black people find themselves in. But to use that type of insulting and demeaning approach, it's the same thing with Candace Owens and a lot of the other black conservative establishment that I've been debating with and arguing with. It's not going to help. And I actually want this to change. That approach that Jesse Lee Peterson has been using towards the black community has been done for almost 60 years, and it hasn't made a dent. Black people are still voting overwhelmingly for Democrats. Democrats can take them for granted for that reason. So when I see people doing more to repel black people than attract, I'm going to have a problem with it, because at this point, I'm tired of it. We need to make some changes here. And what JLP does as far as addressing the black community, it's not going to work. You can't say that you can't think of a single thing that black people have gotten involved in that they haven't destroyed, and then expect black people to look at it and be like, oh yeah, I want to join up with that guy. No, it doesn't work that way.
I see that as just telling the loving truth, because he treats everybody that way. He treats his own friends that way. When he's telling them the truth about themselves, it is reality. He's not saying they never did, but he's talking about present day. That's all they're used for. And this gets me to my my impression real quick of the black conservatives and anybody else who think that Jesse doesn't love blacks, is that they're like a mama, like a mother, like, oh, don't be so hard on them. That's not going to make them want to, agree with you or whatever. Feeling sorry for the people who are subjected to the harsh truth. And they're like intellectuals, they're arrogant snakes. I have a bunch of people who call into my show regularly about this.
I bet.
And sometimes it's uncomfortable to the ego, but it's also the beautiful, refreshing, simple reality. Jesse is simple, and he's not into all these facts and details. So you may, like, for example, Trump. In general, he tells the truth. He's aimed at getting the truth. And sometimes he may say stuff that's not precise or whatever. And people, the media calls him a liar. They call those lies, right? The same thing with Jesse. By the way, are you a Christian?
I am.
Where is your wait and see attitude regarding Jesse Lee Peterson and other blacks like you've mentioned, and these cases like Ahmaud? I call him Ahmaud because it's Ahmaud Arbery. Where is the wait and see? Let me just. It seems like this to me, but why don't you have that wait and see attitude?
You're assuming that I don't. That's not the case. When the thing happened with Ahmaud Arbery, and in a lot of these cases, I do wait and see. I don't just react. In some cases, it's pretty clear what happened, so that when the other details emerge, I can't imagine a scenario where it's going to be justified. Like with George Floyd, I can't imagine a single scenario that's going to ever justify what that officer did. Now, in the case of Ahmaud Arbery, and what a lot of people don't know is when that video hit, that hit 2 months after it happened.
Yeah,
so we already had the facts. There were already news stories about it. We just didn't hear about it because it didn't make national attention. So when that video hit, I got on my Google like everybody else did, and I looked it up to see what happened. I saw what happened with the first district attorney, how she had to recuse herself. Then it later came out that she prevented the officers from arresting the McMichaels. Then I saw that the second district attorney, who ended up having to recuse himself because of an apparent conflict of interest.
Let me stop you, because we're running out of time. What about regarding, how about with Jesse Lee Peterson then, very briefly?
You're talking about wait and see with Jesse Lee Peterson?
Yeah.
See, what you don't know, and he may not remember this, I met Jesse Lee Peterson when I was a much younger man, about probably 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. I met him at a house, at a Republican function at a house in Upland, California. So I've known about him for a long time. He's been around for a long time. He's old school. And like I said before, him, as well as the rest of the black conservative establishment, have been using this messaging approach towards the black community for almost 60 years.
Okay.
I think it's beyond the time of waiting and seeing. I think we've seen it doesn't work. We need to try something new.
Yeah, in some cases, you're right. It doesn't take time. It just takes open eyes. So a lot of people stay blind. Okay, let's get into this thing and I do have calls. Tell me which of these things that you agree or disagree, because this was the whole point of bringing you on, which was very interesting to me. Why, my view, blacks are used for destruction. And I tweeted at you, look around, everywhere blacks are being used to push destruction. Black Lives Matter and the fake racism lie. I'm sure you agree with me about that.
I don't think that it's just blacks that are being used for destruction in that. I mean, who's doing a lot of the writing? Black people, Hispanics, and a lot of white people.
I didn't say just blacks. I said blacks are being used.
I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. So yeah, I mean, the left uses everybody for destruction, but I don't necessarily think that anytime a black person does something that we might not agree with, that is destructive. Like the whole Black Lives Matter thing, before it was co-opted, I'm okay with people saying Black Lives Matter. It doesn't turn you into an SJW. When you see that
no,
black
that's
people
an
are being
insult.
mistreated.
No,
It's
Black
not an
Lives
insult.
Matter is an insult.
It is not an insult.
Yes, it is.
It's been portrayed that way by the right because they don't want you to know what it means. When people say Black Lives Matter, they're not saying white lives don't matter. They're not saying Hispanic lives don't matter.
No.
So to me, there's nothing insulting about it.
It is insulting.
Now, has that movement been used for destruction? Yes, I think so, which is why I don't necessarily co-sign the whole National Black Lives Matter organization. But for individuals who just want to protest mistreatment by police officers, I don't think that's destructive. And so, yes, you do have Black people who are acting in destructive ways. You also have Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black businessmen, Black entrepreneurs, Black people who are using their wealth to try to revitalize their communities. So it's not just like what's the word I'm looking for? It's not just a binary thing. It's not just, Black people are just destructive and only a few are good.
But we're talking about the racism lie. That's why Black Lives Matter is insulting, is because they're pretending like blacks aren't the ones who don't know that Black Lives Matter. They're pretending that whites are the ones who are disregarding Black lives, and that police are the ones who are disregarding Blacks' lives, when it's the blacks who are throwing themselves away, getting into these, involved with crime, resisting arrest, running from the cops, killing one another with abortion and all kinds of madness. They're the ones who need to know that their lives matter, not us.
I think when it comes to that, I think there are Black people who really don't feel like Black lives matter, but I think that most of it is acknowledging that there is racism. I know Jesse Peterson pretends that there's no such thing as racism.
There isn't.
I don't buy that. So since racism does exist and does have an impact, it doesn't mean that we can't succeed in spite of racism. And that's where I come from as a conservative. I'm not the type who's going to say we can never get ahead because of racism. We've done it too many times, so I think we can. But when it comes to when you're talking about Black people resisting arrest, that doesn't always happen. George Floyd, he had his knee on the guy's neck after he was unresponsive. He wasn't resisting. He was in handcuffs. So it's not always because Black people resist arrest. And even so, that doesn't give people the right to use excessive force. Walter Scott was running away. Like you said, okay, well, maybe I wouldn't have run away, but he ran away and got shot in the back. That police officer went to jail for a good reason. This does not excuse anything that the state does just because they want to overstep their boundaries and think that they're going to get away with it.
Where is the racism, so-called racism, in those two cases, George Floyd and Walter Scott? Where's the racism? I don't see it.
Good question. That's why I don't always go to race when it comes to these issues. And when I say racism, I'm talking about other issues.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't mean I have to agree. Now, for all I know, Officer Chauvin could be a virulent racist. I have no idea. I can't read his mind. It's not like it was back in, say, the 60s where people are really open about it. They hide it. So when I see a case like that, I focus on the statism, not the racism, because I don't know if he was racist or not. Maybe he did have an implicit bias. Maybe he didn't. All I know is that what he did was wrong. In the case of Walter Scott, would he have shot a white man? Maybe not. My gut tells me he probably would have, but I can't prove that. I can't read his mind. But what I do know is that he shot a man, I think 8 times while he was running away. That's wrong. That needs to be punished.
Back in the olden days, before the 70s, when the Supreme Court made this decision that you can't shoot a fleeing suspect, that wouldn't have been against the law, because he had already run and fought off the officer. They were in a fight, and he fought him off and ran again.
In the 1800s, slavery was legal too. So what?
Anyways, whatever. It's ridiculous. In my opinion, this whole racism thing, this whole racism thing, you say that you're not a Marxist, but you're falling for the Marxist lie, which is destructive to the blacks especially, actually, and the America in general. It's an attack on whites only, really, of so-called racism. It's such a shame. How about the LGBTQIA stuff? The blacks are used like crazy for that.
Alphabet people.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
On that point, I will not disagree with you. On that last point, I will not disagree with you.
And of course, you agree with me about them supporting Democrats at 90, 96, 98% in some cases.
There's a reason for that, and I don't think we have time to discuss it all.
You shouldn't be making excuses for that. You can blame the Republicans. Yes, they do share the blame, but you should not excuse the useful idiot follower blacks for falling for that. There's no excuse for that.
What are they falling for?
They're falling for Democrats who are like about everything evil, abortion, fake attacks on whites, racism, all that madness, destruction of the family.
Let me ask you this then. If you live in a city and they has a city council and a mayor, how do you vote for a Republican mayor when a Republican isn't even running? How do you vote for a Republican city council member when they're not even running? And the ones that do run don't get any support from the national party. You need a huge political machine to counter the Democratic machine, which has gotten even stronger in the Black community because the Republicans abandoned it over 60 years ago. So it's not just, so you can't just put it on Black people. They can't vote for people who aren't there. It's impossible.
That's a dumb excuse because they are voting Democrat consistently, and it's not just
vote Republican when they're not there.
You can. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. Anyways,
what was supposed to make up a Republican?
There's more. There's Republicans voting at. Did he freeze? You still there? You still there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
The family destruction. They're leading the way in the family destruction and in abortion, way out of proportion amongst the blacks. They're used all the time by Planned Parenthood to pretend that, wanting to stop abortion and all that madness is racist. They're used to push this soft on crime and punish the innocent stuff. We saw it with the lockdown protests. They acted like these people, most of them white, I guess, and the Tea Party were like racist and or not for they didn't have any legitimate complaint. And then when the blacks complaining about the rare instance of a cop killing them unarmed, they go crazy. That's soft on
corporate media.
They're letting people out of jail.
Media is also the enemy of white people too. You're right.
They are.
I agree with it. I want to address, because you brought that up before. Yeah, the far progressive left is anti-white. I mean, I'm not talking about everybody on the left. I'm talking about the far left progressives. Yeah, if you guys go out and you want to protest the lockdowns, they're going to smear you in large part because of the color of your skin. I do believe that.
It seems like the whole Democrat Party is far left now. I mean, I'm not talking about all the voters maybe, but the establishment is far left.
Well, okay, go ahead.
They're putting women in charge. Blacks putting women in charge. You have to agree with me that that's wrong, because look at what that's done to the Black community. And Jesse's right about that. With the single mothers raising violent children it's crazy. It's out of control.
No, that is a problem. And that is an area where I do agree with Jesse Lee Peterson. I'm not discounting the impact of the breakdown of the family. That has had a huge impact. I'm just saying that it's not the only impact. I'm saying that there are a lot of others. I grew up with a single mother. Like you said, I would have rather had both of my parents. But the government did incentivize that. And again, that's the state. So, but the state can't, I don't know that the state can solve that problem. That's something that we need to work on in our community, which again, we are. Bond is not the only organization dedicated to rebuilding the man and to keeping families together, or at least keeping parents involved in their children's lives.
All right. Let's talk briefly, before I get to calls, about the infighting among conservatives, including, and maybe even especially, but maybe just including amongst Black conservatives. You guys don't seem to get along with each other at all. Like, you form these different factions. I guess that's reality nowadays in everybody who's supposed to be like on the side of what's right. To me, it looks like pettiness, jealousy, selfish pride. And you do see it with the alt-right and the whites, but we're talking about blacks today.
Right.
Blacks don't like each other, and other Black conservatives still hate white people. They still believe in this racism lie.
That is a pretty intellectually lazy viewpoint on that. None of us hate white people. I love. I'm surprised you didn't ask me the question, James. Do I love white people? Yeah, I love white people. Yeah,
that's Jesse's question. I love white people. Didn't think of it.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I did it for you. But yeah, but I also love Black people. I also love my people as well. And so the infighting that you're saying, it has nothing to do with hating white people. None of us hate white people. Even when we talk about it behind closed doors, we're not hating white people. Do we want white people on the right to have a more holistic view of the Black community? Yes. Do I want them to see that Black conservatives are not a monolith? Yes. For decades, and I've been a conservative for a while, but about 15 years.
So you didn't vote for Obama, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. You vote for Trump?
Uh, I didn't end up voting in this last election, actually. In this current one, I was going to. Now I don't know what I'm going to do in November.
Wow.
I guess we'll figure that out. I'm definitely not going to vote Democrat. I'll tell you that. The last Democrat I voted for was John Kerry, and that was back when I was a Democrat. So you have to cut me some slack on that. but to get back to your question, though, the rift that you're seeing in the Black conservative movement is basically based on a lot of what I said. Like, a lot of Black conservatives are really tired of there only being one type of message out there that we know doesn't work, and that's what's elevated on the right. So it's not necessarily differences in policy, because I'm sure that if we sat down on policy, 80-90% we're going to be in agreement. But it's just the notion that you're elevating people who say things like Black culture is a joke and pretending like they're actually going to convince Black people to come over to the right. It's not going to happen. And I'll tell you right now, Black Democrats on the right, they're ready for it. They're ready for something different from the Democrats. You just never hear about it. Black people don't love the Democratic Party. They just don't really see the Republican Party as an alternative. And when they see the people who look like them on the right looking from far away, they're seeing them talking down to Black people. They're seeing them only talk negatively about the Black community. They're seeing them peddle lies about the Black community, just to be blunt. So they're thinking, okay, the Democrats suck, but this is the devil I know. I don't know what the hell these people are going to do. So that's a lot of the reasons why a lot of us are pushing back, because one of the reasons why is that we want them to see, hey, we're not all alike here. There are actually Black people who want to bring actual conservative solutions to Black communities.
But kissing up and being nice to the Blacks and not telling them the harsh reality, because it is a harsh reality, is not going to.
Does the Republican Party do what you're saying with impoverished white communities? No, they don't. They treat them with respect. All I'm asking is that the Republican Party, the conservative movement, treats Black Americans the same way they treat white Americans.
And why are the Blacks so interested in somebody who looks like me thinking that way? I cannot even relate to that type of thinking.
Yeah, you can. Everybody can. We're all tribal.
But not in terms of the truth, hearing the truth.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, when you're talking about the truth, if you're looking at people, again, because it's not just the Black conservatives who do it, but if you're looking at a side that lies about your community,
what lies?
What's the truth?
And the other thing is, Jesse Lee Peterson is hardly Black establishment. He's been around for 30 years at this, but he's too harsh for them, because he's about the truth. And the Republicans are a bunch of rhinos anymore. They're not about truth anymore.
Well, and they're also largely not about conservatism either. I mean, you've got some good people in there, but I mean, there's a lot who aren't. I agree with you on that. But again, like and again, I don't know how much time you have, but I mean, there are a lot of lies that are peddled by the right about the Black community.
Name one for me.
So we just talked about one with the whole gang violence thing. That's a prevailing myth. Black people don't care about Black on Black crime. Well, we do.
But it hasn't gotten better because they're not addressing the root issue.
And we talked about that. I'm just saying,
all right,
it's a lie. The notion that we don't care is a lie. Now, you may agree or disagree with some of our solutions. That's one thing. But to say that we don't care is a lie that has been perpetuated.
But you see them riled like a lynch mob. Every time it's a white thing, they're riled like a lynch mob. They've become what they hate. And they hate white people. And then they get all sad sometimes about the Black crime. And I'm talking about on the whole.
No, when a Black person is killed by another Black person in gang violence, you do see people take to the streets. You just never hear about it on the media.
But taking to the streets isn't the solution.
I'm not saying that that's the only solution. I'm just saying, I'm talking about caring. They care. That's why they take to the streets. They don't just take to the streets when it's an officer. Now, I'm not saying this happens, but I'm not saying that this happens every single time a Black person is killed by another Black person. And it doesn't happen every single time a Black person is killed by a police officer. But again, the notion that Black people do not care about crime in their communities is a lie that is peddled on the right.
They care, but they're blind about it. They may care, but they're blind about it. They have no wisdom as to how to deal with it.
That can be another conversation, but I'm addressing the question that you asked. You asked me to give an example of a lie. That was an example of a lie.
I don't see how they have any love for one another since they hate white people. And that's why they stay Democrat.
You're assuming that all black people hate white people.
Not all, most.
You know what's funny? You sound just like Al Sharpton, just a white version of him. Because Sharpton, those types believe that most white people hate black people. You sound just like him. You're two sides of the same coin.
But
most white people don't hate black people.
And there's
most black people don't hate white people.
There's the truth and there's the lie, and then there's this
That's
soft
true, and both of those are
version.
lies.
No, but you're giving a soft lie, like, oh, most blacks don't. We love white people. That's not true. Anyways, I have to get to some calls.
Okay.
Oh, promote your stuff. Tell the people how to get your stuff, because we're running out of time.
Yeah, sure. You can read my stuff on redstate.com and at libertynation.com, and you can get me on Twitter at Jeff on the Right.
All right. Appreciate you joining. Let me get to a caller or two. Maze out of Dayton, Ohio. My favorite caller, actually. Maze.
Yes, James.
Go for it.
I'm going to tell you, Black Lives Matter started in 1965. You go look it up. And then when it comes to him being a conservative for 15 years, you got people that's been conservative all their lives. They didn't want to change over to be Democrats. Out of all of the mistreatments they got out of both parties, they still were conservatives and Republicans. So I don't know what is. I've been 15 years. I was a Democrat. I don't believe in neither one of the parties because they two are the same. So I don't understand why anybody's in the party. Because the party do the same thing, and when I hear somebody come out and say that, and then James, you a Caucasian sitting up there to tell the black community what they need to do.
I'm American. I have the freedom of speech to say what I want.
The black community did not bring drugs into the black community. You need to see.
They continue to, though.
And the things that's doing to mess it up. And y'all posted is the black community, abortion, and blacks killing blacks. But when the opioid epidemic came along, y'all did help for each other, trying to came up with a bill and all of this stuff. What did you do when it was dropped off in the other community? Nothing. But look at that, put them in jail. I ain't seen nobody going to jail for opioids.
Maze.
So when you sit on your pedestal to sit and try to tell us what we think in your mind, look at your problems and have somebody on the show that look like you, and y'all sit there and discuss it and let us understand where y'all coming from.
Thanks for showing how you hate. Thanks for showing how you hate white people, Maze.
I don't hate anybody.
Yes, you do. You're fake.
Tell me who I hate in your mind. You're not even showing it because there's no love in either one of the parties.
I'm going to put you on hold if you don't be quiet because I'm trying to respond.
No.
All right. Maze, behave. So it's intellectually lazy to say that the Republicans and the Democrats are the same. Nowadays, yes, they are because the rhinos are pathetic and roll over. But in reality, the platform is completely different. The Republicans supposed to believe in God, family, the country, law and order, all that stuff. And so, no, you're wrong about that. And then you talk about the opioid thing. That's another, yes. Okay, present day, the leadership and policing is so politically correct and weak. So that's a totally different situation from back in the 90s. And the other thing about the 90s was the crack epidemic was associated with violent crime. Yes, the people are dying from opioids at a way higher rate, but that's not necessarily violent crime, murders like crazy. I wish that we would throw the people in jail for the opioid stuff. That would be nice, but it's a completely different situation. That's a fake idea saying, oh, it's racist because they kiss up to the whites and feel sorry for the whites who are dying of opioids, but the blacks are dying in the crack epidemic. They were killing one another. That's why I didn't mind Hillary Clinton calling them super predators.
So can I finish, James?
Yeah, I thought you were done.
And as I was saying, you look at the black community, but you don't look at your own community. You're a Caucasian. In your mind,
you don't know what you're talking about. You're the one who doesn't look at the blacks.
Talk about what Jesse said, but you need to.
Anyways, Maze, let me be quiet. Let me have you be quiet because I want Jeff to respond to anything. Go for it. Hurry up. We're out of time.
Jeff is speaking too because 15 years of being a Republican, really? Colin Powell been all his life. He never changed. I don't hate him because he's still a Republican.
He changed? No, he's a Democrat now. Anyways, anything, Jeff, to this?
I love this lady. I love this lady. The one thing that she said that both parties have done wrong to black people. And the thing is, when I'm talking about getting more black people over to the right, I don't want black people voting 90% for either party.
I know.
If black people are going to have more electoral power, it's better if our votes are spread out. So yeah, she's right. But if we're voting 90% for Democrats, they have no incentive to change anything.
But that doesn't make sense, Jeff. I got to go, Maze. You have a good day.
If he's in either one in the party is something wrong, because you got to see what they're doing. Because what are they bringing to forth for all the haters that they spend? Don't tread on me and all this different stuff that the party that James belonged to. So why you want to be involved with anything like that?
All right, bye. You have a good day, Maze. That's an insane statement for you to say that you don't want blacks voting 90% for Republicans. What is good about the Democrat platform? I mean, yes, the Republicans are so much rhinos now. I understand, but one is for the side of good. Why did you even become a Republican if you don't want them?
So let me answer that.
All right, and then we got to end. We're like overtime. Go for it.
Let's say if 95% of white people voted for Republicans, and let's say 95% of black people voted for Republicans. Republicans are a political party. What do you think they're going to do when they don't have to compete for our votes? Are they really going to care about you? Are they going to care about me? Hell no. That's why I think it is good to have more than one party, because that way, if one party is in control, they can lose it. And right now, there is no threat of them losing, the Democrats losing the black vote, because the GOP won't compete. When they do start to compete, things will get better for us. It'll get better for you. It'll get better for all of America.
But we need to return to morality, because most of the Republicans now are so phony. That's why I loved Trump coming on the scene and being a contrast, because he was real. Oh my gosh. Let's give me one more minute, Joel. I want to get Lucas out of Alhambra, California in. Go for it, Lucas.
Hey, I just wanted to make one comment about your guest's opinion about Jesse. I'll make it really quick. Well, first of all, his foundation, when he first started it, he was trying to rebuild the black man specifically. I watched a lot of his old ones.
Yeah.
And he calls white people weak all the time. And he calls white people weak. And I'm white. I'm a white Hispanic. So, I mean, it's not like he just singles out black people, and he's black, so you're getting it from the source. I mean, he's been through a lot, so I don't see why you wouldn't just want to listen to it and take it all in, you know, and not just get mad about words like, oh, they're made to, you know, destroy. That's just a word. Overcome it.
I appreciate it, Lucas. I agree with you. Yeah, I started coming to Jesse's church because of the Christianity. Like, he's like one decent example of Christianity in Los Angeles or California. And that's why I keep up with Jesse. It doesn't have anything to do with him being hard on the blacks or not. What do you have any response to Lucas?
Yeah, I mean, and I know about Jesse Peterson's organization. I remember him talking about it at the meeting where I did meet him. Here's my thing. When somebody on the left calls me an Uncle Tom or a coon, which hasn't happened in a while, but back when it did, there was nothing about that made me even want to listen to what they had to say. I don't take them seriously because they don't deserve to be taken seriously. They don't have minds. But the reverse is also true. You can't insult somebody into joining your cause. And I think he knows this. I think we all know it. But I mean,
that's
it is
not
what
reality,
it is.
man. There's people waking up across all races thanks to Jesse's work, because he's about truth, and he's not even really into this black stuff anymore, but he's into
That's
just
true.
telling the truth. He's into helping people and waking people up, opening eyes. And this thing about insults, he's telling the harsh truth. And there's like every now and then you'll pretty much every week you hear a new black call in saying, "Oh my gosh, you're right." And so this thing about insults, that's weak. Let me quickly get to Chris, and then we'll out of Dodge City, Kansas. Chris, 30 seconds, go. Appreciate you hanging over, Jeff, by the way.
No
problem.
Jeff Charles.
No problem.
Mr. Charles.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Chris. You mentioned something that I think is very important in my mind. It's the idea of statism. You said that you focus on the issue of statism, if I understood you correctly. And my sense of it, having worked in racial reconciliation when I was younger, in fact, I was one of the architects of the whole concept of white privilege back in the late 80s and into the 90s. And I know why we did that. And I've repented from that scam. But statism, as long as we focus on race, as long as we this creation of race and racism and white privilege and all these things have been created over the years, can there be any unity? And are these issues really the things that the state, people in power, use to make sure that they stay in power, and that they're able to build their own wealth at the expense of other people? And statism is a very communist idea and concept. It just seems that what we're doing with race in this day and time, we should be intelligent enough to stop focusing on that and stop talking about it, because
we got to end, Chris.
It was created to divide people. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Take care, Chris. Thank you, sir. Jeff, anything else?
Man, that was a really good question. I would love to have more time to address that. But I will say, like I said, in these situations, I'm not saying that race isn't involved, because sometimes it might be, sometimes it may not be. But the key point is the statism, like the caller said. He was absolutely right. And it kind of brings up the question, why doesn't the media report on situations where white people experience police brutality? There's a reason for that. And we'll have to talk about that again.
Thank you, Chris. Jeff, maybe we'll have you back. It'll be fun. I enjoyed talking with you. And maybe when I go to 2 hours, we'll have more time. Appreciate you, man. Take care. And callers and viewers, I can't really get to your comments and super chats. I will be reading them tomorrow on the Hake Report Monday. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jeff Charles. Jeff on the right on Twitter. And you can find his writings there as well through that. Take care.